welcome to our first episode. I'm so excited to introduce you guys to the two amazing poets and writers. We have Ibrahim and Medina Whitemen. And this is our show. We are a live writing workshop through the feminine voice. We're really excited to have you here. So Medina, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. Assalamu alaikum, or peace be with you. My name is Medina Whitemen. I am a writer, poet, singer. I basically work with words in many, many different forms. Sometimes I write scripts. I haven't actually got my books to hand to show you. I'm the author of a collection of poetry called Love as a Traveller and Wear Its Path. I also wrote a travel guide to Islamic Spain under the title Hues Guide to Travel to Islamic Spain. And most recently, another book called The Invisible Muslim, which is a travelogue stroke memoir. So I feel like all of these things kind of meld together in my writing. Like there's always poetry, there's always story, there's always some kind of song in the background there. Yeah, this is my writing career so far.
So humble. We love Medina. I fell in love with Medina's work when we did a workshop together for Gathering of Muslim Artists, the Gamma workshop, and she sung at the end and we all left in tears. It was one of the most beautiful workshops. So really excited to have you on Race Karma.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
And then we have Ibrahim, who I cannot wait for you guys to get to know. She has an amazing personality. I feel like she's a mirror person to who I am. So I'm really excited for you guys to get to know her. So Irum, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Amna and Medina. I loved hearing that introduction. Beautiful, beautiful stuff that some of which I didn't know before. But I personally am also a writer and an author. I recently became an author, and I have a background in journalism. And I have a passion for storytelling and kind of humanizing the other in conflict, whoever that other may be in the situation. So my first book, actually, I published last January 2019. It's called Nothing to Summit, and it's a compilation of short essay pieces that are all related to spiritual. It's all spiritual writing. It's reflective writing, and the pieces were actually written in a private blog. They were kind of essentially letters to myself, and then later on, I decided I saw those pieces again, and I decided this would be a great book if I compiled the pieces. So. Each piece is kind of focused on the fear of failure, and when you do fall and fail, how to kind of regain that strength and hope to get back up and kind of keep going, and this idea that there's something greater than us, and that's God.
That is beautiful. And you're going to have another show on Race Karma that's focused on your writing work, right, Irum?
Yes. So stay tuned for that as well. Another episode will be coming soon. I can't wait to share more details with you guys about that.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have Irum and Medina together because these are both incredible writers who have published work, who have really spent their time perfecting their writing process, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then there's me, who's like a novice who writes here and there. But I'm really hoping that, like, with the audience, can go on a journey with me as a novice writer or someone who's interested in getting started, to be with these two incredible women, and we go through this journey of writing and getting to know each other. And every week we're going to come with a topic that Race Karma is focusing on for that week. So we're really excited for you to be part of the journey. So why don't you guys kind of explain what you guys hope the audience gets out of these series, this 4-part series, during our time with them?
Irum, do you want to go first?
Sure, Medina, thank you. So
throw it over to you.
I hope that viewers and potential or aspiring writers or even current writers, they kind of go what they leave with and what they learn while watching and listening to us is that there is so much room for us to build our creativity and the way we think when it comes to our problems. So we a lot of my personal writing is very reflective and it's spiritual. So let's say I'm going through some deep struggle or an internal battle. I turn to writing so I can kind of solve that problem or solve the issue that I'm going through. And especially because when I get all my thoughts out, it helps me declutter my mind. So I want people to kind of be encouraged to write more or pursue whatever artistic ability they have that helps improve the quality of their life.
Yeah, so as for me, well, I agree completely with what Irum was saying. For me, I'm a very verbal person. If I need to process anything, I write about it. I write it out because I find it's once I've seen it on the page, it just starts to make sense. Once it's kind of floating in up here in a cloud, it's too opaque and I can't see through it. But once I've managed to put it down on the paper, it's like lightning bolts. You get it out onto the paper, and then it's like, oh, okay, right, that's what that was about. And often in the process of writing, things will come out that you had no idea were actually there and were relevant at all. It's a bit like a magician pulling a silk scarf out of a hat. One thing leads to another, and then eventually you've got all this colored silk in your hands, and you sort of weren't expecting it. I also feel that art in general, it's like a mirror. So if at any time you think you're sitting down to write about something, and actually you find you end up writing about yourself, but that's not necessarily a sort of navel-gazing thing. It's a reflective thing. So you're seeing yourself, but maybe in a kind of a naked way that you're not expecting to. It may be scary also. It may be frightening, and I think that's why often sitting down to actually start writing is frightening and daunting for a lot of people. Even experienced writers, sometimes you get out of the habit, you lose your, you get rusty with it, and then it's difficult to kind of arrancar, they say in Spanish, like, turn the key in the engine. But once you get going with it, you find yourself in this realm where it's a realm of discovery, really. And in it, it's like, so the art is your mirror, but what you see is not only yourself and everything around you, but you can be a window. So you can actually end up seeing through yourself into something else.
Definitely.
And that's really special, and I'd love to be able to share that with anyone who's interested in trying and experiencing.
That's really powerful, and I think what's going to be fun about these episodes as the novice writer is watching you guys go through that process. Because for me, I only write when I'm extremely inspired and it's just flowing out of me. Usually that's after I've woken up, after I've had a certain dream or I've had a certain experience in life, and then I reflect on it later, and then it just starts spilling out of me. So I've never really have a process or anything that's consistent. So it'll be interesting to see you guys on this live workshop and kind of see how you guys work, but then also see how your feminine voice affects that. So I think the next thing I really want to start talking about is like thoughts. This week, Race Karma is focused on negative thoughts and turning them into more positive ones. So my first question to you guys is like, how do thoughts actually affect your writing process, and how do you ever find yourself in the spiral, and does writing actually help with that?
For me personally, my writing is mostly, I write mostly to get over negative thoughts and kind of to reframe the situation in my mind, and also to, again, like find a solution for the problem, and to understand why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking and why I'm acting the way I'm acting. So negative thoughts are something that you can't really you can't completely get rid of, but you work around them. Like, you learn how to work with them. Excuse me. So personally, like, let's say a very unfortunate situation happens in my life. I turn through my page, I grab a pen, and I start just really pouring my heart out. So for me, my process consists of just like being very raw and honest and open, and and trying to write more about those things that are really hard to write about. So whether that's shame, or whether that is betrayal, or whether that is deceit, those things that are really, are the most vulnerable parts of you. So what I do is I just write whatever is in my heart and in my mind, and then I try to organize what's on the page. But the reason I do this specifically is because this is my personal way of like making sure I'm being as honest as possible. Because I feel to get over those negative thoughts, you really have to let them surface. Like you really have to call them out, you know, like you have to say them out loud, kind of. And reframing the situation is also done for me through writing, because while I'm editing that work, while I'm changing those sentences around, I'm also like painting a new picture. And a lot of that has to do with shifting your mindset on the positive side of things. And even when there is something negative, finding the positive truly in that negative as well. Because I really do believe that even in the most difficult situations, there is some light there still.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I actually personally, I've never used the writing aspect of it, but something that I really relate to is when I find myself in a spiral, especially as women, we have these imposter syndromes, statistically are definitely more common in women than men in the workplace, outside of the workplace. Guilt overwhelms us as mothers. Even the smallest thing my daughter does, I'm like, oh my God, it's my fault, right? One thing I've found that's been really interesting is that when I'm looking at people around me and looking at my relationships with them, I'm thinking, am I catching these people doing things right, or am I catching them doing things wrong? And then I relate that back to myself, because how I view others ends up being how I view myself. So if I notice that I'm catching a lot of people doing things wrong in my life, then I know that, hey, I'm judging myself as well, which is a mirror reflection of my life. So I wonder how that actually might even impact writing for you guys.
Yeah, oh, completely. I started writing a blog when my daughter, my second child, was like 1.5. Wow. No, actually, before that, I was pregnant with her. So I was I had a 1-year-old. I was, we were building a house. It was a very stressful period of my life. And I found that I would sit down to write kind of like full of angst and like, oh, I'm doing everything wrong and everything is, not right. It's not the way that it should be. And then I'd find myself laughing, actually. I'd find that the more exaggerated that angst was, and the more the more upset I was, the more hilarious I'd end up finding situations. So I'd kind of end up curing myself, and it would get something unstuck, because like you're saying, like the judgment thing, the mind is very much like it's got these kind of claws, like it wants to kind of grab you in some ways. And so whether it's guilt or shame, I mean, sometimes those things can be beneficial, because maybe there's something that you've done that you feel you did wrong and you hurt somebody, and so that feeling is like an impulse to get up and make a change, go and apologize and make amends. But yeah, just today I was commenting to somebody, like, when you find yourself criticizing somebody a lot, you kind of have to step back and go, hang on, this is coming up for me a lot. Is it because it's just something that I'm reflecting from myself? So I need to check myself first. In any criticism, it always has to start, with yourself. And that's why reflective writing is so useful, because then it's a way of holding yourself to account as well. It's like, it can be just really fun and beautiful and joyous, or it could be cathartic, or it can be a way of kind of going, hold on, I'm going to check myself here. And that's what Irum was saying with the editing process, why it's so useful. And it's so difficult, and most writers really detest editing, and most people really hate it. Any kind of critical feedback, creative feedback. If you're a designer, for example, and you're working for a client and you come up with ideas and you send them over, and then the client said, I hated them, and it's like, but actually that's a really important process. And I feel like that's the process of muhasaba, of holding yourself to account and kind of observing yourself and recognizing what's happening inside you, and maybe what can be changed. That's one way that writing is so valuable. It's so useful, and that's where it's happening, is in the second stage of writing. Once you've had your kind of creative outpouring, and then you come back, you sit with a different mindset, the critical mindset, and it's painful, because you see all the things that you're doing wrong and you want to change. But you have to just do it with a lot of love and compassion, and go, well, I didn't know, like now I do.
Yeah. That could definitely be really healing, right? So I have a question.
Totally.
I have a question for you guys. How does being a woman affect your writing? And, you know, we might have some male audience, we might have some female audience, but what is it about being a woman, and what is it about feminine writing that you find different? So that the audience can kind of reflect on the name we chose, which is live writing with the feminine voice, right? So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been thinking a lot about this myself too, just personally when it comes to the world of writers and writing and reading pieces written by other people. Men and women are so different. We, like, our experiences, the way we perceive situations, the way we respond. I mean, there's so many similarities, of course, but there's so many differences. And writing has actually, when I write from that perspective, my experiences as a woman, and it's interesting because you think about all the women in your life, you know, like your mother, your sister, your aunts, your good friends, and you see that there's a lot of common themes. And one of the common themes, personally, that I see is there's so much strength. Like I'm always so impressed and inspired by seeing the strength, especially of my mother, and just seeing, like, my whole life how much she sacrificed for her children, for her family. She always put everyone first. She immigrated here with the family from Pakistan, and you know, like, our parents have sacrificed, or our mothers specifically have sacrificed our dreams so that they can see us kind of pursue what we have, that we our dreams and what we want to do. And you had another question too, Amna?
Yeah, just being a woman and sort of what is feminine writing and what is a feminine voice?
Yeah. So I really I think it's a lot of strength. I think there's pain and strength in it, and there's strength because of the pain. I guess when I write, it's a reflection of all the stories and experiences I've experienced myself, and also I've seen my loved ones around me, the women around me, experience, and how that has impacted my life. Definitely strength. Like, I just can't even say enough how strong women are.
Well, Medina knows because she's a mother and she's in the middle of it right now.
You know, it's funny. I was just thinking today as well about how if I'm ever in that situation again where I feel kind of diminished because I'm maybe the only woman in a room, and there's a certain dynamic there that's making me feel like I'm doubting myself, I'm doubting my contribution or my voice, or just not feeling strong. I just have to recall, I gave birth 3 times without anesthesia. Like, all of this should be a walk in the park. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do, because I did the same, but once. I can't imagine 3 times.
I can imagine because I don't have any kids.
But I mean, there's lots of women who don't have babies, and lots of women who don't have wombs. I mean, there are all different kinds of manifestations of womanliness and womanhood. The strength thing that Irum pointed out is really important, and I feel like there's a kind of resilience there. And for me, I mean, I've always been a writer. Ever since I was a child, I felt like I actually wanted to be a novelist. My dream at about the age of 8, I suppose, was to live abroad and learn languages and write books, which is actually, funny enough, what I've ended up doing. But I haven't really written novels. I've tried writing novels, but I haven't finished any. But what I found is that having children gave me so much to talk about, because there was all of these experiences that I felt were kind of not really reflected in widespread kind of discourse, you know. Even just things like menstruation, you know. So we have a cycle, and we are sort of feeling really energetic for one part of that cycle, and then we feel really like, woo, you know, go-getters, kind of like we can sort of take on the world, and then it sort of we start almost declining and feeling kind of weaker and more irritable, And then when we have our period, it's like you're really almost like going into the grave. And I wrote a blog post about it because it felt like, well, I really had a sensation like I was being lowered into a tomb, you know. And I sort of thought that's actually a really incredible experience for us. That's a privilege to have like a foreshadowing of what's going to happen to everybody. And so it's not fun, and it's not it's not something that most people would choose to have. But it's like being ill. Like sometimes it's quite good to be ill, like have that feeling of like, I'm just going to go to bed now. I'm really going to look after myself, and I'm going to let everything else go, and I'm not going to try and accomplish anything, and just really be with this.
Yeah.
And kind of, it's like a grief, that sort of feeling of being completely low. So all these sorts of things. And then of course the practicalities of having small children, again, doesn't mean necessarily that they're your own children, but like anybody who's in service and is in caring for others and is around small children, you learn a lot from kids, and they're hilarious and crazy, and they sort of just say whatever's on their minds, and they don't have any filters, so you learn a lot about humanity. But also just the practicalities of not having much time on my hands, whereas before I could just stay up all night writing if I felt like it. I could just sit in my window or a balcony or something and just kind of ponder for hours, but I didn't actually produce all that much. Whereas once I had kids, I was kind of more pushed for time, and it gave me a lot more sort of desire. Like it made me really want to write and really get it out. Kind of gave me some desperation, which I guess I didn't really have before that. Like I'm really impressed that Irum has done this. Like at a relatively young age. Like it took me a really long time to sort of go, okay, that's it. I'm going to pursue this, and I'm going to try and write a book and get it out there. I think it was like what Amna was saying, that the sort of imposter syndrome. For a long time, it's like, well, who cares about my voice, or this sort of thing, which is really hard to get over.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I graduated college, like in 2014. So it's been 5 years, and I got into the workplace. I traditionally have worked in oil and gas and consulting, and in the startup world, which is all male dominant. And just like going through that process of that imposter syndrome was definitely very difficult, because you were already fighting the forces of the male in the room, like you mentioned earlier, and then getting over that and then finding strength within your own voice. That in itself takes so much strength that once you do find that voice, you want to cling on to it. You're like, this is me, right? This is who I am. And so if you can turn that, and like for me, I'm really excited because if I can turn that into writing and reflect on sort of some of the experiences I've been through, I feel like it could just be really powerful and add a different voice and a different set of experiences, because as women, it's usually easier for us to be more vulnerable about those things. Yeah, so I'm really excited. So I wanted to know if there was a prompt you guys brought for our topic this week, which was thoughts, and then we can move into the next segment, which is our live writing. Okay, so now for the best part of our program, which everyone's probably really excited about, is the live writing. So Irum, why don't you describe the first prompt?
Sure. So basically for this live writing, I want everyone to write about a place where they feel extremely positive. So where they don't really have this idea of a lot of negative thoughts, they feel very uplifted, and they feel like they can kind of take on the world. So I want all of you guys to do that. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a location like a city or a town or anything like that. It can be an imaginary place. It can also be a person, whatever you want. So be very creative with this. Okay, guys, you have 2 minutes to do this prompt. So good luck, and I can't wait to see what you write. Okay, guys, time's up. I just want you to put your pens down or stop typing and just take a look at your work and reflect on it. And even if you think it's not good, just remember that it needs to be edited still.
So this prompt immediately took me to the Albaicin, maybe because we were talking about it before, but it's always a place that I feel like I come back to whenever I go back there. It's where I was born, and I feel like I just come back to a part of myself whenever I go there. So this is what I wrote. I could have carried on writing a lot longer. The streets are cobbled. A bougainvillea spills deepest pink lanterns over a whitewashed wall, and I'm striding on my way to the shop. No, I'm walking away. The shutters are down, and my shutters are up. I passed the Moroccans selling leather slippers, incense, the mosque that was once a post office, a hostel where I once stayed in bunks with a bunch of gigglesome sisters, past the baklava shop, jasmine green tea and mint lingering on my lips from years ago, up past the smoothie and shisha place that closed down. I would have carried on going up and up and up the hill, but I ran out of time.
I love that so much. It's so beautiful. There's so much imagery there, and I'm noticing how with your piece, or maybe your writing style in general, I feel like you have that first draft that's very strong. And with my first draft, I'm very rough with it. It's almost like I'm writing notes. It's almost like I'm writing notes for like the final draft. So that's really interesting to see, and I love what you wrote.
Oh, thank you. I want to hear yours now.
Okay, so mine is about Medina, actually. So this is what I have. Bright sun, fresh air, beautiful people, the smell of fresh dirt, a sense of peace and tranquility, a feeling that Allah is taking care of you. This idea that God invited you to be here in this moment in time. A reminder that He is always going to answer your prayers, especially in ways that you don't realize much later. And see, even there I messed up. It should say, especially in ways you don't realize until much later. Medina, I love you. When I'm with you, I feel like I'm home. My worries and pain wash away, and that's how much I got.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Guys, that's so beautiful. I love it. Can I share what I wrote?
To be in a place that makes you feel like God welcomed you there and brought you there, that's really quite special.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I really love that, both of you. There's so much imagery there. So here's a novice person's perspective and what I came up with. Don't judge. I'm so nervous. This is being live streamed, you guys. My whole family is gonna hear this. My mom is my biggest fan. Okay, so I was actually really shocked by this prompt and what came out. So I wrote, the roses are just growing out of their buds. The sun is touching my face. The garden is surrounding me with lush greenery. The clouds are right above me. I can't even recognize my own writing. Isn't that crazy? I find myself sitting, breathing, looking to connect with the one whose light is within me. My positive place is not outside of me, but within me.
Oh,
wow.
That's beautiful.
And then I was writing and I was thinking, and it just came out and I'm like, it's within me? Oh, okay, that makes sense. I guess so.
Yeah.
I love that.
So even I didn't know where I was going with this. So this is a really beautiful exercise. What do you guys recommend? Like, I know, obviously we're limited, unfortunately, by time here, but what do you recommend? And it's like, just keep writing, keep going, or should one just like kind of stop and see what comes out of what they've created so far?
Yeah, I think they should stop and like kind of look at what they've created so far.
Got it. Okay, should we move on to?
I carried on a lot more, but I mean, I type very fast as well, so I could have gone on maybe twice as long and then started to go back again. Like, so I can look back now and see things that I could take out or alter, but
so what would you?
Roll, it's like keep going, keep going, keep going.
What would you take out
of mine?
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
I would just tighten up the wording a little bit. So, for example, I don't need the with jasmine green tea and mint lingering on my lips. I can take with out. I mean, that's in poetry particularly. Like, if you read it out aloud, you notice that you trip on words.
Yeah.
And you think that's unnecessary, so I'm going to take that out. And so you want it to be as smooth as possible, so it's just feeling like it's cutting through, and like transmitting as cleanly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
like I felt like I was going back and forth in time as I was writing. So I'd like to maybe enhance that a little bit. I mean, even like the first few lines, I'm like, I'm going to the shop. No, I'm walking away from it. Like, I don't even know which way I'm going. Am I going back in time? Or am I going forward in time?
Yeah.
But I'd maybe try and enhance that feeling. Yeah, as a poem, if it was a poem, I'd obviously break it up. So like instead of commas, I could do line breaks, for example. And even the no could be on its own, you know, to like give it a bit more power and more impact. Yeah, so that like, if I was to turn it into a poem, this is kind of what I would do to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah. Past the baklava shop, jasmine green tea, and mint lingering on my lips from years ago. I could even leave the up there. That's called a spondy, by the way. I think that's a spondy. When you break up a line over a so you break up a sentence over a line break, and so the word that you kind of leave one hanging, and it can enhance the feeling of a sentence. So like if you're talking about an actual hanging kind of feeling, like if you're talking about something being a little bit in suspense, then that's quite a fun way of expressing it in the actual structure of a poem. And there, because I'm kind of like talking about going up, it's like, oh, I want to kind of leave that on a shelf almost, and then kind of, it's almost like a step. As a poem, it could be, I could structure it as like walking, like actual, make it like steps, kind of building up to a crescendo, and then, you know, maybe leave it there. So yeah, that's what I would do. I guess make a space there.
Yeah, I have a lot of changes because again, like I purposely want I personally encourage aspiring writers, not like professional writers, to really in order to make their work very honest and raw, like they have to not care how their first draft sounds.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's why I wanted to do this. So here, like I'm just starting off. This is what I would do. I would actually make notes on this. So I would say, okay, needs an intro. I probably won't keep this one. Then I say, bright sun, fresh air, smell fresh dirt. Now this word, I want to. I'm gonna highlight this word because I already used it here. So I want to change this. So I'll make a comment. Can you see the comment? Okay. Okay, so I'll just make a parentheses. A sense of, and also for beautiful people. Describe the people you see, how they look, what they are wearing, and the expressions you see. And then as well. So usually when I'm writing, I highlight all my edits. So like if there's something that needs to be changed, I just highlight it. Then here, I would probably change Allah to God because I used God here. And then here I would say feeling. Describe what you feel. Or take this.
Oh, by the way, I need to tell you that that wasn't a spondy, what I was telling you about. It's called enjambment. Just for the nerds who want a word for things. A spondy is when you have a word that has two stresses. It's not like iambic pentameters. It's a word, two stressed syllables together. Entanglement.
Okay.
Are we going to use a different doc or the same doc? Oh, okay. Or just put lots of returns to push it down. So it's still
like
there.
when I got to this sentence right here, I didn't like how this sounded. I just didn't like it, and that happens a lot. So I'm just making a note to delete that sentence.
Which sentence is it? I can't see it.
It just says my worries and pain washed away. Yeah, and then I would just say like describe what home means.
What was it you didn't like about that sentence? Just out of curiosity.
I feel like it sounds like a very cliche statement, and if I am to talk about it, I would go into the imagery of water and like sin washing away. But I don't want to go that direction with peace.
Yeah, cool. It's always interesting because sometimes I think it's just a case of taste, like, you know, especially I suppose if you have been working on your craft for some time and you kind of adopted certain teachings that you picked up, it starts to become kind of quite natural that you see something and you just go, that just strikes a note for me. I'm not happy with it. I'm going to go back, and like you can't explain why, but you just think, I don't like that. I can improve it. I can make it better, or I can make it clearer, or like there's not even an explanation for it. It's just, you know, that it's not the way you want it to be.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting.
Okay, guys, well, that was a really fun exercise. I definitely, while you guys were making your edits, I started making edits. I added a few things. I took a lot from both of you. You know, I think, Irum, from you, I learned that it's not about judging your thoughts. Just put it out there, because you can always go back and make the changes. You can always go back and say, hey, like, this doesn't make sense, or I don't like this, or let me get an intro. But just put something on there. You have to start somewhere. And I actually found a piece of judgment that I had that I scratched off somewhere. And so when I saw you do that, it made me feel like, you know, I could have just gone with it. Maybe something else would have come out. And then Medina, what I really loved is that you used taste. So it wasn't just one sense or two senses. It was a lot of senses. Like you used taste. And I thought that was cool. So I went and added into my poem about like the air touching my throat and relaxing my body. So I kind of added that in because I was like, I like the idea of other sensations other than what's outside of you. So that was really cool. So I think, Medina, you would like to share the second prompt with the audience?
Yeah. So in this prompt, I want you to take the negative thought that you have uppermost in your mind, visualize it as a being, as a kind of a guide. See it almost like a spirit guide. You know, it could be a person, it could be an animal, it could be whatever you want it to be. And I want you to really have a clear vision, try and get as clear a vision, a picture of what that guide is like. Describe them, how they look, maybe how they dress if they're wearing clothes, what sounds they make, you know, maybe even what they smell like, or something like this, you know, get a really strong picture of who they are. And then I want you to just write about going on a journey with them. And you could actually the journey could be taking you to the place we just described in Irum's prompt.
Wow.
So if that's not too complex, but if it's too complex, just describe it as a guide and see what happens.
Yeah,
I love this kind of exercise though, because it really stretches your imagination.
yeah.
So just to give a little context, I have a sticker on my key from a Granny Smith apple, and the brand is Blue Whale. And so I just had that in my head, but it seemed to fit the feeling. Well, let's see if you can guess what kind of feeling or negative thought that I was trying to express here. Blue whale, sitting cramped in the corner of a room on its doubled over tail. Too tight suit and tie, sweating, trying to act natural, but I can see it's feeling totally superfluous. Swirls its cranberry juice in its glass, makes awkward eye contact and looks away. I call a cab on the street outside, beckon the whale to come with me. I don't know why, it just seems kinder to get him out of there. Although the taxi is far more cramped and uncomfortable. My apologies, dear guide. Once on the road, though, the whale knows exactly where to go. We careen down back streets. He's shouting at the taxi driver and laughing when the latter doesn't know the shortcuts. And as we drive, he's shrinking. So what I was going to talk about there was how, he was so enormous and so kind of like the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But on this journey, he's sort of just taking a more kind of physically smaller space, so he's not so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not feeling like he's taking place.
Wow.
Can you guess what it was I was talking about?
I can't. But I don't want to guess wrong. That's the thing. You have to tell me.
It was a kind of a bit too far out there. Maybe if I had gone a bit further, you would know. It just lately I've been sort of reflecting on how family dynamics, like when you're among your family again as an adult, you kind of slip back into certain childish patterns. And I think I have a kind of some kind of inner child aspect that sort of feels like it's not really good enough, or can't be up there with the big people, sort of thing.
That's crazy. I had the same topic.
Really? Yeah. Oh my gosh!
But not due to family, and I didn't get very far in mine. I've noticed through this activity and the last prompt as well, that you're a fast writer. So I just got my ideas out on the paper. So I'm gonna go through that right now. Were you done, Medina?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I was sitting on my bed the other night, tired, cranky, a mind filled with negativity. I realized that my negative thoughts were all surrounding this idea of me not being good enough in every and any aspect in my life. I then saw my thoughts form into a human body. He came up to me and smiled, shook my hand, and asked me how I'm doing. I was in shock. I was wondering if I was dreaming, but I went with it, whatever was going on. The man asked me why I was feeling so sad. Why are you crying? Did someone hurt you? And that's as far as I got. So very brief idea. But I mean,
it was really clear though. You can really get a sense of exactly what, you know, you're stating it very clearly what it is that you're feeling, which is really cool.
I love this activity because even while I was writing, I was realizing that if I were to keep going, obviously if we had more time, I knew that the human body or the man would basically prove to me that these are just thoughts in your head. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I'm not what you think I am. Like does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Like you obviously are good enough, and I'm this human that you think I'm filled with your this whole idea. I'm this whole idea in one body of you not being good enough. But what I really am is just a normal, nice person that's looking out for you. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's really deep. Because that's really like your negative thoughts that's how I see them. Like they can really show you where to go by, if you can actually just step away from them and say, okay, so who are you? What are you doing in my life? And what can I do about this? Like this is like a continuous or repetitive, is that the word? Kind of repeating thing that I keep coming back to. So like, come on, let's show me, what do I do now?
Yeah, exactly.
That was really clear.
Yeah,
I really love that. I had a very interesting mix between what you two wrote as what I wrote. So here's my novice opinion between amazing writers. You guys are so good at getting so much on paper so fast. I'm like the slowest out of the two of you. So I wrote, the animal is bushy and large. It runs with its feet up and down. It's holding something that I have. It's holding my heart down. This animal runs within me. It keeps coming up to catch those around me who do wrong. I hear the little girl crying, no one does wrong. Don't run away. Come back and lock yourself away. I'm having trouble reading my writing again. How can this creature control so much of my being? God is my judge, and all I do is wrong.
Wow.
That's so good.
Really?
It's amazing. How can you call yourself a novice? Like you just jumped straight in there and you just did it.
I don't know. How did this come out to be a rhyme though? Like I'm shocked. I wasn't intending it to be a rhyme.
Yeah.
No.
Beautiful.
Maybe it's destined to be a poem. It's funny because initially I sort of thought of a large kind of furry animal, almost a little bit like, you know, the luck dragon in Neverending Story, like something like that. And I ended up with something completely different. Obviously, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like a very friendly kind of creature that you had.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it was such a mix of both of ours. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I really like that both of you had a very friendly creature, and I had like this thing taking over.
Yeah, we did have a really nice. That's so funny.
I like
how
that
negative
you guys have this
so nice to us.
mindset, you know. So I think it really showed.
What did you say?
Yeah.
You guys really come from this like positive mindset, and I think it really shows in writing right now.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you get to that point, I think, by going through the shadows. Like you go into the shadowland, right, Irum? You go in to where it's really dark and really painful.
Yeah.
And then you kind of spend a bit of time there and it's like, okay, all right, actually this isn't so bad. Or it's not that it's not so bad, but it's like, okay, I'm growing to be able to handle this. And then then you start seeing like a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. I definitely also believe that good people, good positive people around you make a huge influence. You know, like a lot of people who have grown up in very negative or abusive households, they hold that negativity in them, and it's really.
So my husband pulled up an image of a really furry, ugly animal on the screen right now.
It's from the Neverending Story.
It's from the Neverending Story. The audience can see what you were talking about, Medina.
He's very weird looking, but he's very lovely, and he has a fantastic laugh. He goes ho 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 ho.
So I think for today, unfortunately, we've run out of time to do the live edits, but I'm really excited for our audience to sort of follow you guys on Instagram and see what you guys come up with at the end. But Medina, would you like to invite our audience to share what they have so that we can share in our next episode?
Yeah, how shall we do it? So they post it in comments?
So after this is over, in the comments we'll have the email address where they can submit it to, since this was your idea. So.
Oh yeah, this is my contribution. Just giving ourselves more work, but it's going to be really interesting. So for all the viewers watching at home, of course everyone is at home right now. Where else are you going to be? When we will have an email in the caption below this this video on YouTube. And that will be where you can send your pieces to. And we will be really happy to read what you've written and maybe respond to them in some way. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do that.
This is definitely on the fly, but we're hoping to have you guys share your poems with us. And then Medina or Irum will actually read it and kind of connect with it and see like what they think of it, and we'll get their reaction.
In the next show.
In the next episode. But we also encourage you guys along when this is aired. Medina and Irum are actually going to be in the comments with you guys, talking to you. So share what you experienced and engage with them. You probably already noticed that they're doing that, but share as you're writing in our comments section as well. So, and if you liked this episode, join us for our next one. Where Medina is actually going to take over the next one, right, Medina? The next topic, which we'll share with the audience later.
Yeah. Top secret.
So we're really excited, and so we hope you guys had fun. Any last words before we close to get people to come next time?
Ooh. Words of wisdom. Just keep writing. Just put your pen to the paper and just write and see what comes out, and don't be afraid.
That's so funny that you said that. I was literally verbatim about to say the same thing. Keep writing. And like don't give up on it. And this is for people who want to write, who like writing, not people who don't. Don't try to do something you don't want to do. But for people who love it and who are finding benefit, but they have those like lows, it's okay. And you will also have a lot of writer's block, but like don't give up on it and keep finding the benefit in it and keep working on it, and you will improve, and it will help you in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I love that, guys. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you for writing with us.
Peace and love, guys.
There is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. You can choose to step into it, or you can choose to step back. Back into a crowded hall of rushing figures, each one urging you on to a different goal, and none of them attainable. Hand-wringing rag people, squeezed of all joy, fists longing to squeeze you too. But there is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. To err on the side of kindness is easy because kindness has so many sides and never bolts its doors. Sly voices will try to convince you otherwise. In their outstretched hands, empty prizes rush towards them and they dematerialize. But there is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. Your feet are shy to step inside, but your shoulders long to soak up that shine. Melt the knots that your bowed neck hides. Accept this as your place, dear child. Pride lies not in elbowing forward to skip the line, but in believing your own disguise. Limping when you could stride, crawling when you could rise, not daring to risk exposure in an illumination this wide. There is a shaft of light at the edge of the world, and it is called home.
You
Beautiful.
deep, boo boo. You deep.
I ain't deep. Cut. Go.
And action.
Peace. My name is LuFuki.
My name is Tazeen, and you are watching
Handasat.
So we are, like we said, LuFuki and Tazeen, and we are a musical duo. Composers, guitarists. I'm also a vocalist. We're based in Detroit.
Yes.
And the type of music that we're interested in is world music, sacred music,
Spiritual music. Black classical.
Yep.
Also known as jazz.
Jazz, Afro jazz.
Yes. Mixture with a lot of world sounds and Indian, Afro, and whatever else we can throw in there.
Whatever we can throw in there. Basically taking from the sacred sounds.
Yeah, sacredness and sacredness of sound in different places, things like that. So we experimented with a lot of different instruments that's not as traditional as we would think in the West. We're trying to incorporate that, and it's even like some chanting and things like that. On the first album, we had some very interesting stuff, like from Aaron,
who played violin, and he did the Tibetan.
Chanting. Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of different. We like to play around with sound. A lot of different types of sound. And the two of us have our collective, which is
Divine Providence.
Yes. And we had our first album that came out. It's now been 3 years almost.
Has it been 2 or 3 years?
I think it's been 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
That it's been out, and
it's time for another one.
It's time for the next album. So you can look it up, LuFuki and Divine Providence. The first album was Inner Horizons. But what we are doing now is we are doing a series in which we're talking about the art of sound and musicianship and sort of exploring the sacredness of sound within different traditions and different instruments with artists that we know. So we're really excited about that. And the first several episodes of this show and this project is with the help and the support of Raise Karma, which is the artist residency program that we're a part of right now.
Thank you.
So thank you to Raise Karma. Shout out to them. Yes. Look up their page and the wonderful artists that they have on this page. There's 15 artists in total, and everyone's
honored to be a part of the first cohort.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely check that out because there's really incredible people on that. But this show in particular, it's called Handasat. So what is Handasat?
Handasat, plainly it means the science of sound. Now that's just a term that was given for people who are practicing the science of sound. It has other names, but Handasat seems to be more general and more, accessible. So basically, the science of sound, what we're trying to concentrate in this cohort or this series of interviews we're going to do is how sound impacts our lives, and how it affects our bodies, our nature, our souls, and things like that. So we're going to interview different artists who believe that sound is actually has a healing property, and we're going to look at it at different spiritual practices, and see what would come out of it. And what you would find actually during the series is a commonality between all these practitioners of sound engineering, So it's a very concept that's based on or centered around like Sufism. Sufism is a spiritual branch of Islam. So we're going to approach it from that view, but not limiting the meaning about it.
Because it's so universal.
It's very universal. So it might be different terminologies, but it's all the same. We're all trying to reach the same goal. The view on the mountaintop is the same when you get there.
Right. And, the science of sound and the art of sound, I guess, can be used sort of interchangeably.
Yes.
But it's just exploring how do we use sound,
Yes.
and how does it impact us, how does it affect us,
Yes.
and the sound that's within us, because it's not just external.
Yes, it's definitely internal. It has to start internal. But I would say that Handasat is just, like I said, it's just one type of terminology. I would say what a word that covers it all is Azzah, which is the spiritual session, spiritual music auditory session. Yes. So, and that that changed, or that could change during what time it's been used, right? So in time of Rumi, they have the Mep levies, and that's a form of sama with the poetry and the music, things like that. So intentionally, that's what I try to do. That's what I'm thinking when I'm writing music, to create a spiritual experience for the listener. So Handasat is a way of just breaking down the breaking it all down and making it into formats that people can understand.
Why? Because this was the title is something that you came up with, and it's been something that's interested you in so long. Why the Arabic title? What's the significance of that for you?
Because I think, as I'm a linguistic. I got my master's in Arabic. So if I'm coming at it from that angle, that Islamic Sufi type of way, I think to keep to a title that makes sense, that actually something that I can adhere to, because actually Handasat is just, like I said, is just one name for it, but it's broken down into so many pieces, and so in order to understand what I was doing as a person who practiced Sufism, I had to look for the original sources that explained it. So Handasat is keeping it to that tradition, because language is everything, right? So using that name is a term that people can people who are like me, and it might be Muslim or Sufi, that can understand what I'm trying to get to. And Handasat, I just want to keep it closer to the original teaching as possible, just raise awareness of it.
Well, that's it. Handasat. Well, we're just gonna jump right in with our first session today. So this week we're talking about negative thoughts, and for us, negative thoughts in relation to us as artists, as musicians. What does that mean? What are some things that we can do to rectify that as an issue, or sort of deal with those types of negative thoughts that come to us? So let's just jump right into it by just defining it then. Like, what are negative thoughts? What do we think? How would we define negative thoughts?
And how to get there.
and how to get there, or how to get past there.
Yeah, how to get past there.
Yeah, I think there's so much when it comes to negative thoughts. I think a lot of times, in terms of the artistry, negative thoughts are like those thoughts of doubt that we have about ourselves. Like, I'm not good enough, or I don't play well enough, or comparing yourself to other people. I know I did that a lot when I started off as a musician. It's like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't play the scales well enough, or I don't play this and that. And those doubts, when they creep in, it's like you start believing them, and it hinders you from moving forward and moving past those thoughts and actually practicing and just expressing whatever it is that you feel in that moment, and being authentic and honest to what that sound is in that moment. And the journey of it.
I think we've ran into a lot of artists that are stuck at that point when they have so much doubt in their ability. But for me, it's, you know, their ability is not questionable, that they're good, but they have so much doubt in their hearts they can't actually move forward, because they always say, oh, it's not good enough, no one will like it, or no one will understand me. And my answer to them is always like, someone needs to hear this besides you, because someone's going through the same thing. If you overcome this within yourself, you'll help someone else out. So we believe that art, music, or whatever, is not just for the person who's producing it, it's for people who see it and listen to it also. It has to be a two-way street. It has to be a one who's producing it and the one who's receiving it. It has to be, you know, they have to they're both the same, on the same body.
Right.
Just
There
different
was
names.
there was an artist in Chicago who had said that at a retreat that we went to, that someone out there needs your art. Someone out there needs to hear it. And by not expressing and by not sharing that which is coming to us, we're not only depriving ourselves of that art and depriving ourselves of that sort of divine channel and connection with that expression, but also depriving someone else who needed to hear that, you know, as a musician, who needed to hear those melodies or those harmonies, or who needed to hear those lyrics, or who needed to see that painting, or who needed to, whatever that art form is, right? Because it's this interaction. At least with sound, it's like a very visceral interaction that you're having between the person who's playing and producing the sound with an instrument, and then that vibration literally moving from our hand, from that instrument, to the other person.
You almost have to, like, and it's kind of cliche, but let go. Because there's nothing more vulnerable being on stage in front of people and just giving everything you have, that what's inside of you. That's very vulnerable, because you don't know if they're gonna clap, boo. You know, you just know you need to get up there and do it.
Yeah.
So and when we perform also, it's like we know what songs we're gonna do, but we open ourselves to changing on the spot. You know, because it's about being in that moment. You know, and submitting to that time.
Yeah.
And not, if I make a mistake, so what? I'm not worried about what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow. What matters is now. And that's like one of the sciences of Handasat. It's called, it's a term called Ibn Waqt, a person of the time. And that person is in that moment, and nothing matters except that moment. And he's connecting with the band, he's connecting with the audience. And it's almost, it could become a point where he's experiencing himself outside of himself.
Yeah.
So it's like become a big bunch of oneness, if that makes sense. You know, it's kind of like a paradox, you know.
At what point in your journey in music did you get to that?
It didn't take long, because I was self-taught. So I was doing things that I didn't know how I was doing it. And then another thing, I didn't know how to repeat it. So the closest example I can think of that is when you're having the runner's high.
Yeah.
So you're running, you're jogging, you get to the point where your body is just moving by itself, and you're witnessing everything around you in slow motion. And you get to the point like, wait a minute, okay, I'm running, but I'm witnessing everything in slow motion, and I'm connected with everything. You know, once you experience that that runner's high, you always want to get back to that. So I was experiencing that before I knew what it was, and I always try to reach that point. And that's that, trying to get into that point, you have to actually leave yourself. You know, forget about yourself, and get inside of the music. You know, so I experienced that without knowing what it was until I started studying about it. You know, from the Sufi perspective, I said, "Oh, that makes total sense." I'm losing myself. You know.
I think that's what, I mean, negative thoughts falls right into that, because I know I've experienced that before on the opposite end of like that doubt that we might have, especially like when I first started performing, that nervousness or that doubt or that that desire to have it come out perfect.
Yeah.
Or like you practice it and you're like, this is what I want. Like I want this note, this note, this note. I want to sing it this melody. What happens if I start off key? Like, and
It's gotta go.
And you, when you're in the middle of a performance, you can't just stop. You don't just stop and say, okay, let me try again. I mean, maybe if you're in an open mic, you could do that. But, but when you're at like a big performance, it's like wherever you start, that's it. You got to just go with it, and you got to just move with it.
Improvisation is probably the most scariest thing ever.
But also freeing.
It's also freeing, but it's a scary concept with people who study music in the West. Traditional music is a part of the performance.
Right.
Improvisation.
Right.
And I've read that, I heard that in some traditions, the dancers don't know what the musicians are going to do until the first beat on the drum. So you have to know what to do at that time on the drop of the dime. Yeah. Now, coming from the Western perspective, everything has to be charted, which is cool, you know, but it can also limit you from thinking outside that box. Yeah. So, and like I said, I was outside of the box when I started, but didn't know I was outside of the box until I started learning about what I'm doing. Yeah. And then what I learned was the type of people that I liked, and they were doing the same thing. There was a whole thing was what we call in Sufism fana. It's like to totally like lose yourself in the ecstasy of sound. So,
I think one of the things that helps an individual allow themselves to get to that point is jam sessions, because it's like low stakes. You're in a session with all these,
judgment.
You know, no judgment. You're in a session with all these musicians who also want to get to that state of losing themselves and just be able to test out and try out anything.
Yes.
You know, and if you don't have that safe space with other musicians who will allow you to express yourself as authentically in that moment, then it's hard to get to that point.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's not just you. Like, you're having that experience as part of a collective with other musicians.
Yes, that's true. I remember one story. Those of you who know me, I'm a big Santana fan.
Huge Santana fan.
So he was giving, this is my early stages, trying to figure out what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was reading his interviews from Rolling Stone magazine, and one time, one experience he gave was like, we started jamming on stage, not jamming, but it was a concert. He said he looked over to the keyboard player, he was gone. And he looked over to the bass player, he was gone. And looked at the drummer, he was gone. He said everyone was gone, but syncing at the same time. And that's what the concept of wahda comes into play.
That oneness.
The oneness of whatever way you could describe it, right? It's a paradox, you know, but it's the mystery of life as we know it, you know. And I would like to get into that more as we go along, hopefully, because the concept of it is interesting all in itself. but this week is I guess heedlessness.
Well, heedlessness we're going to talk about
negative
a little,
thoughts. I'm sorry,
little
negative
later,
thoughts.
but negative thoughts.
But well, actually, it lead into heedlessness eventually. But
Yeah.
negative thoughts is so usually negative thoughts is what we try to is what we project on people, right? But as a musician, it's good to reflect on ourselves when it comes to those qualities, right? Because through my studies, and it's just not something that that's obligatory for anyone to believe, things like that. But I try to make sense out of what I do according to my teachings and my understandings of, of belief and things like that. I truly believe that, and this is based on my experience also and what I see from other people. So I really try to like break it down so it can make sense to me. So I can see what I'm going through based on, I guess, my makeup.
Yeah.
So I truly believe that the musician or artist is truly under the tajalli or manifestation of one particular verse in the Quran, and that's from Surah Baqarah, right? When Allah says, "Samihna wa ata'na," we hear and we obey, right? So, as a musician, I like to think that my inspiration comes from a higher source.
Right.
That's other than myself. That I had nothing to do with, right? If I can hear something and duplicate it on my guitar or piano, it's a good start, right? So in that sense, I'm hearing something.
Like the melody comes to you.
That melody comes to me, and I follow through, right?
Right.
So I'm hearing something, sami'na wa ta'na. I'm following through. I hear something, and I'm following through with it, And we can see that as artists within ourselves.
Yeah.
When that happens, we don't want to hear anything from anybody.
Because you're in the zone.
You have to get it down. If you don't get it down, you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
So you tune out everything around you until at least you can get the concept of what came to you.
Right.
Even the concept of what came to you is a spiritual manifestation.
Right.
Because where is it coming from? Right?
It's not that you thought it up, but if you heard, if a melody comes to you, or like a song comes to me, or like lyrics come.
Yes.
It's not like I sat down and I'm like, okay, what am I going to write?
Yeah. I mean,
it's just flowing.
The most important scientists in history, they discover things suddenly, out of nowhere. After they exhausted all their knowledge, and they came to a point they just sat and it came to them.
Right.
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
You can't quantify that, right? So it's an essence that cannot be detected. That's giving you that information in order for you to produce something that's
you beautiful. Deep, boo boo. You deep.
I ain't deep.
You know why though? Like, it's interesting to me because that verse or those words, "Sami'na wa ata'na," comes up a lot. Like, it comes up pretty frequently, and most times when I hear it or when other Muslims hear it, you're always taught to be like, you hear the words of God, or you hear like the ruling, or you hear what you're supposed to do and you obey, right? But we don't really think of it as we're literally hearing something.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have to obey it by writing it down.
Yes.
Like times where I wake up in the middle of the night and I have words that are coming to me.
Yes.
And I have to write it in that moment. And I can't talk to you while I'm doing that.
Yes.
I can't do anything else while I'm doing that. Because if I don't follow through with it, it's gone.
Yes.
It's not going to come back.
And the best time for those inspirations is when you are in a state of depression. When you stay in depression, or I mean, even happiness sometimes can't bring out what's inside of you. It has to be something that's really affecting you. Maybe it's sadness, things like that. And sometimes happiness, But you know, you get those songs and those melodies, when you hear it, you know it came from a place of deep conviction.
I mean, that's blues.
That's blues, yes. So blues was created, blues and jazz was created out of a situation that was so intense that was the only way to express what they were going through.
Right.
You know, so that's another topic all in itself.
But I think that's something to bring up, at least for now, with, you know, the murders of George Floyd and so many Black Americans and just Black people around the world who have been murdered at the hands of police, that part of our job as musicians, we're deeply affected.
Yes.
You know, and when you're deeply affected, you're going to express in some way.
That's another form of samirna. You hear it and you feel it.
Yeah.
And you follow through. Atana.
Yeah.
You follow through what you're feeling. You follow through what you're hearing. And if you don't do it, especially as a musician, you feel some kind of depression.
Yeah.
You know, even as, you know, and we're lucky as musicians, we can actually express ourselves and our anger through our art.
Yeah.
Instead of it being bogged up inside, things like that. So back to Samina and Wadana. If an artist doesn't follow through, and we've seen this with people, if an artist doesn't follow through, he gets to a state of heedlessness and negative thoughts about his art. So he's creating doubt, shak after shak about himself.
Shak meaning doubt.
Yeah, doubt about himself constantly until he doesn't even produce it, you know. And that's those negative thoughts coming in, like you don't have what it takes, or it doesn't make sense. You know, all those negative thoughts that khawatir, we believe that's from Shaitan, because he doesn't want us to
Shaitan meaning Satan.
Satan. He doesn't want us, or negative forces, whatever, do not want us to move forward. So in order, one of the ways for us not to move forward, he puts doubt in us, in our abilities, and plus what we're hearing also. So the first thing that the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, did after he got the first revelation, he was bewildered, right? What did he do? He went to his wife. And she gave him counsel that, no, it's impossible that you are bewitched because you are a noble count. Right. So Shaitan would try to play that role that Satan or negative forces or people who are close with us would try to say you don't have what it takes, or this is not important. But when you do produce it, you see the benefit of it.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can move on from that. But
well, that reminds me of sort of two things. One is that stemming from that trust that you're having in yourself and in the art stems from the intention of that art. So like if that intention is coming from a place of like authenticity and being genuine and really expressing what is true for you in that moment, then it will come out as something that is true and authentic and genuine. And I think it's really easy to detect what is authentic and what's not, what is genuine and what is not. And then I think on the sort of flip side of that is there's also, like, yes, we have to express whatever it is that comes out, regardless of whether we think it's at the standard that we want it to be, but that we keep pushing ourselves in that process so that we get to the place where we want to be, so that we get to the sound that we're looking for. Like with guitar, you're always looking for the right pedal to give you the sound that you're looking for. I'm always looking for the right type of wood or the right type of strings. Like I just bought a new guitar, you know, it's been maybe 6 months. This Godin that's right here. And it's a beautiful guitar, but I don't like the strings. And every time I play it, I'm like, it's too twangy. I have to change this or I have to change that. There's that process of getting to the sound that you're looking for. And it's not that it's coming from a place of doubt. In that case, it's coming from a desire to grow. Yeah. And a desire to get better.
It's very subjective too. It's like, it's to produce a sound that you're hearing is the most subjective thing.
Right.
You can never tell anyone what's really the sound you're hearing.
Yeah.
You know, you might give a like a maybe a chord. You might have a chord, an idea of a chord, right? And if you don't know
even if you hum it.
Even if you hum it, you know, but it's like sound is such a subtle, powerful thing,
Right.
right? And that's why as a guitarist, you know, is you're trying to find that right tone. It's so subjective because it's different for everybody,
person.
you know.
And it might be different depending on the time frame that you're in.
Yeah.
Like you might like something right now, 5 years from now.
Yeah.
You're looking for something else.
That's
or even
the
1 year
evolution.
from now.
That's the evolution, you know, and I will probably change
Evolution.
some things as time goes by. You know, that's almost inevitable for guitar players like me. You're gonna change because you grow.
Gonna grow.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, the other thing that I was thinking about, going back to like the doubts that we have in this journey that we're going through to sort of perfect that sound, to perfect our skill, to and knowing that we're never going to reach perfection, but we're striving to grow. We're striving to get somewhere, get to a point, and then when you get to that point, we're trying to get to the next point, right? There's that ascension will never end. But that there is something to say about I guess what would you say about producing art and then getting the critique or feedback of other musicians? Musicians that you trust, or musicians whose sound that you trust. And even that, of course, is subjective too. I might create something that you might not like, but it's what I want. And you might create something that I don't like you did the other day, and I was like, maybe drop off those chords halfway through the sound or the song or whatever. But that's what you were hearing, and that's what you like. So like this, I don't know where I'm going with this. Maybe the balance between...
I think you have to be, not necessarily confident. You just have to follow through what you're feeling.
Yeah.
You know, and let the chips fall where they may.
Right.
And those chips could be, you know, positive feedback or negative feedback. When Jimi Hendrix said, all publicity is good publicity, whether it's good or bad. Of course, that's not what we look for, but he's just showing that at least people are listening. You know, and that's what I think that's more important than the accolades you might get, because sometimes you want to disturb. And you want to make people cry, make people laugh, make people reflect. And you know how many times people came up to us and they said they were crying, and we had no idea what was happening.
Yeah.
But at least we know we're affecting them, and it reached them somehow. Even if they came up to us and say they hate it, at least
you felt something.
You felt something, you know. And maybe it was good for you, you know. You know, if we believe in God's decree, that was meant for you, and I'm just delivering it to you
in that moment.
So I'm submitting whatever outcome there is, and as artists, I think that that's I wouldn't say a safe way, but that's an easy way. That's a good way to view it, because if you're looking for accolades and you don't get it,
you're going to be upset.
You're going to be upset, and it's a cause of depression and things like that, and expectations, things like that. You have to have, it's particularly in the music that I follow, and you know I use it as a spiritual practice. You have to do it without expecting expectations, something in return. You know.
Yeah.
If you're looking for that, then you're committing association with the revelation that you've given. You know, like the Prophet ﷺ said, I delivered the message.
Do what you will with it.
Do what you will with it, you know? So.
Well, I think that's what ends up happening too, is like you are delivering that piece, that composition, those notes, those melodies in that moment. And then it's...
Here it is.
It's out. Like it has its own life, and it's living, and it's going to affect people in however way it's going to affect them. And it's so interesting because it's an actual vibration. It's actual energy, right? Sound waves are actual energy and vibrations that are passing on from one person to the next person. So if it stirs up something in one person, it may stir them to talk or to reflect or to whatever, and that energy passes on from that person.
Yes.
And it sort of moves.
Yeah.
And maybe it comes back to you.
Yeah, that's the notion of the Handasat. All this is like explained in the science of sound. You know, so I mean, this series is wonderful because I can actually try to explain the notion of it and
Right.
how I see music as a spiritual practice and how it relates to the self as far as putting the self in tune, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
You know, with vibrations and with the drum and the guitar,
Yeah.
the sonic effects. You know, those are all important things. You know, and it's not music is something. It's not haphazard. You know, it's
Yeah.
divine. You know, everything in creation has a sound. Everything that moves has a sound.
Right.
So all those movements, if you can hear all those movements of the birds, the ants, or whatever, everything from the sky to
Yeah.
to the earth and everything in between, that's all harmony. You know, driving down the street, hearing the construction. If you can sit and listen, there's a sort of rhythm to it. You start to hear a rhythm for it. You know.
Right.
You know, they call it the music of the streets. You just walk down and hear something, you know. And some artists do that. They disguise themselves and to take a walk, I don't know, down New York and just listen to what people are saying.
Yeah.
And listen to the sounds.
Well, do you remember that one artist? I forget what his name was at the Firehouse event that we did, and he basically recorded sounds.
Yeah.
Like he recorded rain, and he recorded someone like taking their trash can down their driveway, or like random sounds, and then he used those sounds and he created a song, a piece out of it.
Yep.
Because there is melody in that.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying about this submitting to that.
Yes.
Because ultimately that is a reflection of us as humans submitting to the will. Submitting to the decree, submitting to not just the sounds that are coming to us, but submitting to what is happening around us. Which doesn't mean to say that you don't take action and you don't, you know, fight for justice, or you don't speak up when you need to speak up, but submitting in the sense of being mindful of all these things that are happening and being able to be in oneness with them.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, when you submit to it, you actually open yourself to witness the wisdom of things, right? So you're submitting to what happens, but also you could bear witness to what's happening at the same time. So if you don't submit to it, you're fighting against it, right? And then you miss the subtleties of what's happening, right? But if you they say cool heads are like still water, you know.
Who says that?
I don't know. Someone said that. They're coming up. You hear it all the time, you know. So, you know when the oceans.
You just kicked this.
I'm sorry. When the lake is calm, you know.
When the lake is calm.
It's deep, right? But the river flows and it's running. But in the middle of the lake is this deepest part.
And it's still.
And it's still, you know. So.
That's why you're still all the time.
I don't know. I'm running my mouth now.
This is why you're water.
No, that's Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee said be like water.
You are like water, though. Your element is water.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but...
It is.
Okay.
It's phlegmatic.
Okay.
Me, on the other hand, I'm fire. I'm choleric.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, but...
But listen, the fire and the water balance each other out. It's a beautiful balancing dance.
I guess.
That comes together.
Yeah.
That's that oneness.
Yeah. Someone's...
Yeah. Well, I think when you submit to that oneness, that's That's what taslim is. That's what submission.
Yes.
True submission. What
Yeah.
does true submission look like?
Yeah.
And that's the perfect example of what true submission looks
Yeah.
like.
I mean, true submission is also following through what you're experiencing or inspired to do.
Right.
You follow through it. You don't doubt yourself. You just, where's my pen? Where's my guitar? You know, I need to get this down.
Right.
So that's submitting to something of a divine nature that comes to you, you know, instead of fighting it, you know. But those negative thoughts, they come in and destroys all that.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Which leads to heedlessness, which is actually one of our future discussions.
Yeah,
in this,
in the next couple episodes.
Yeah, so look out for that.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to share?
I would just encourage practitioners of sound or art to you know, take a listen to the podcast. I shouldn't say podcast. To the series of talks that we have coming up. If you are of the artists who believes that your art form is a form of spiritual expression or spiritual practice, I encourage you to listen to these series coming up, because you might find something that you can take with you.
Yeah. I think that's sort of, there's so many different types of art forms and expression and music, and I think that's what is so special about this type of music that we do, and I feel so blessed to be a part of that community, or a part of our community, is that it's based on it's almost like spiritual discipline. Right? That you're disciplining the self through the music and through the sound, as opposed to like, I'm trying to make it big, and I'm trying to like put out this catchy song. Like, anybody can put out a catchy, you know, $1 million hit song, but the point is, are you putting something out that is true to who you are, that is authentic, that is real, and is seen as real? Like, you can see, you see through things that aren't, right? Yeah. And then, are you growing through that piece? Precisely. Because it's a living piece. Precisely. And are you honoring it? And I think that goes to say with us dealing with other artists too. Are we honoring the work that other people are putting out that is real and authentic and true to who they are?
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. There's so much. There's so much depth and nuance to it.
Exactly. And we're going to try to bring it out. It's an ocean, but we're going to try to at least get to the shore so we can dive in it eventually. Yep. So on that note, peace and love, signing off with love and light. My name is Tazeen. LuFuki.
And we'll see you next time on
Thank you.
Handasat.
And together we are...
No, and you're watching Handasat.
Okay.
Don't do that shit.
Bah!
Oh my god. Why did you do that? That was so jarring. That was not something you needed to submit to.
You needed to.
There is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. You can choose to step into it, or you can choose to step back. Back into a crowded hall of rushing figures, each one urging you on to a different goal, and none of them attainable. Hand-wringing rag people, squeezed of all joy, fists longing to squeeze you too. But there is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. To err on the side of kindness is easy because kindness has so many sides and never bolts its doors. Sly voices will try to convince you otherwise. In their outstretched hands, empty prizes rush towards them and they dematerialize. But there is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. Your feet are shy to step inside, but your shoulders long to soak up that shine. Melt the knots that your bowed neck hides. Accept this as your place, dear child. Pride lies not in elbowing forward to skip the line, but in believing your own disguise. Limping when you could stride, crawling when you could rise, not daring to risk exposure in an illumination this wide. There is a shaft of light at the edge of the world, and it is called home.
Yo, what up, though? It's Langston Hues, and right now I'm with the Reminders for Reasoning sessions airing every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yes.
Currently here contributing to Raise Karma. It is with great privilege and enthusiasm and great privilege, I reiterate, to have these two beautiful souls here. There's been a great history between myself and them as well. And these two individuals, they changed the world I knew and made it much bigger. I remember there was a time back in the day, they took me on their tour out in Colorado. I pulled up in Colorado. I can't remember what I was doing in Colorado, actually, but I pulled up in Colorado. They took me into their home. I met the family, the kids, and then they took me onto like a couple of their shows. And I was able to witness some things that I'd never witnessed before in regards to like music, valuable music, conscious music, and making an impact. And we were able to collaborate on a few things as well within the community. Like you guys were heavy and still are, I'm sure, heavy in the community and just contributing to karma, I guess, karma and good deeds and things that are valuable. And
Man, yeah, thank you.
yeah. And you guys are keeping busy, always grinding and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
What's
man.
going on now?
We can't stop, man. Just got to stay busy, stay active, you know, and keep things moving. Recording and sharing music and just, you know, creating different programs and curriculums, just sharing knowledge around the world.
Yeah, I rock with it, man. How's everything with the family, man? I know you guys always incorporate your children in everything that you're doing.
Yeah, they're growing, and, you know, they're contributing now. You know, they're contributing musically, and, you know, being on the road. It's not just like having babies anymore. You know, they're part of the family, part of the camp.
We have one kid who, she has a great ear for music. Our youngest daughter, she has a great ear for music, so she's been DJing and she got gigs and she's going all over the place. Another one that makes beats and rhymes and produces all his own music, and he's 9 years old.
Yep.
And then we have an older child who's a visual artist who chose her own school for the year so that she could take advanced classes and graduate early to have a year off to study art before she goes to art school.
Yeah, and so we support whatever decision they make and whatever it is they're inclined to, and we show them how it can be something bigger. You know what I mean? It's not just something that you're doing on the side. It's like, no, this, if you get better at this, this really can become something.
I think another thing is like why you can have children, like in the manner that you guys have, they're pursuing the things they desire. They believe in their full potentials because they have great examples. They have a great example in the household and in life. And then you also said that you incorporate them in everything that's important. And it's because you guys truly express and prove with proof that they are important. So it's easy to incorporate them and what else is important. They've always been a part of that. It's never been like a separate thing. It's always been like a one thing.
Yeah.
You were saying about how, you know, one is a DJ, one is a visual artist, one is picking their own school. And I think it's almost similar to the track you mentioned, or the track you have, Dust and Bones, where a lot of the lyrics is talking about the courage that you have in yourself, and then overcoming the obstacles you may have in the past, which may be, it may be negative thoughts, similar to our topic, but empowering yourself and reaching your full potential. And I can see why you guys would make a track like that, because you're living that and you're showing your kids, and you're also providing them positive reinforcement like, yo, what's good? You see us, you guys can do whatever you want to do. Nothing can stop that. Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
It's so interesting to me, especially with children, when giving messages about overcoming the obstacles sometimes that we place in front of ourselves, whether it be self-doubt or, like you said, negative thoughts, or an incapability to purify our intention. Like, when it comes to children, everybody's always so adamant about vocalizing that they believe in children. I believe in you, never thinking about making sure that you're an example for children to believe in, never making sure that your children can believe in you. You know what I mean? And I think when we're talking about the things that we deal with, we want our children to see us in the fullness of our being. You know, I never want my children to grow up and feel like, who is this person that raised me versus who is this person that I'm conversing with now? Right. You know, our children know us, our spirits and our intentions, and we have an understanding. And a lot of the time, people are asking us questions about the way we raise our children, but there's nothing we do with our children that wasn't intentional. Yeah. And the way we speak to our children even, and the way that our children speak to each other, is just a reflection of the fact that we are not afraid of encountering things that are difficult, because we know that we're equipped with all the tools, mashallah, to like deal with what comes up, you know. And that's the ultimate belief in yourself, is not saying I'm so great that I'm not going to have any obstacles or any conflicts, but saying that I'm so balanced in my being that when I encounter those things, I believe I have the capability to hold my ground.
And also, as much as we raised them, they've also raised us. And, you know, being around us all the time, there's been songs that we wrote about them when they were babies because of how much they changed us, how much impact they had on our lives. And as we've grown, they still teach us and raise us every day in you know, in a different way.
Yeah, each kid we had just like deepened our purpose and our commitment to like self-fulfillment. Like, each child that we had just like strengthened our resolve when it comes to that.
Where would you say is the source? Like, there are people in this world that they grew up in single parent households, or they grew up in foster care. If they don't have examples like your children are fortunate to have, where will they learn to get this source of courage and wisdom and inspiration to truly believe in themselves, to lift their self-esteem, to understand their value and their worth? What is what do you suggest is a means for people to learn that coming from maybe like a underprivileged situation?
We work with a lot of youth like that actually, and Samir actually, from his commitment to kind of working with young men that may have gotten, you know, neglected or misguided, or I'll let him tell the story, but he ended up working very directly with youth like that.
Yeah, so because I come from a single parent home, you know, my mother raised us. She raised 3 children on her own, so I've watched her growing up, you know, and I think that's what led me to being the kind of father I am, the kind of parent I am, and working in foster care, working in group homes and things like that. I realized the importance of how much youth or younger people look up to you and watch your every move, not just what you're supposed to be doing, but at all times. You know, they watch the way I engage with Asia. They watch the way I raise my children outside of when I was clocking in and out of work. You know what I mean? And so that's, you know, a lot of times artists try not to take the responsible role. Well, I'm not a role model, I'm just an artist. No, you're very much a role model. The minute someone is looking up to you, it's your responsibility to act accordingly. You know what I mean? To be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when it comes to that, I can't be around a child without trying to connect or engage with them in some way. I can't be around a young person without trying to connect or engage with them in some way, because I think the way that they see the world, for me, is something that I connect to very deeply. And I think it contains so much wonder and so much curiosity. But I heard a quote that said, how it's a pity that children are usually the first people to be hurt and the last people to be helped. And that quote really resonated with me when I heard that, because I find that to be very true. When it comes to musicians, I have a difference of opinion than Samir. I am conflicted between whether expressing yourself in your fullness as an artist requires the type of responsibility where you have to evaluate all the eyes that are on you, or whether you have a responsibility to be who you are all the time in a genuine way in front of people, even if it's not desirable. You know, so I kind of go back and forth between, when I talk to different artists, saying you shouldn't be like this or you shouldn't be like that. And the word should is just difficult for me. I just think, you know, with certain artists, we know they're just being who they are. And like we said, when we chose the name Reminders, because Allah says we're all examples for one another. Whether that example is positive or negative is a part of the journey. You know what I mean? And it's important for everybody to bear witness to that. You know what I mean? And when it comes to children, we are this way without faking it. Like, we are this way with children. We are this way as artists. This is who we are. You know, and some people are being who they are. If we can find a way to reconcile those two for the benefit of people growing up, I think that would be an amazing accomplishment in the artistic community.
Yeah, absolutely. And by no means am I saying you have to fake it or be somebody else, somebody different, but you have to be responsible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very important.
It goes back to what you were saying. So I got a little story for y'all. Y'all might not know this, you know. So I dabble in music, not at a caliber like you guys, but the name for you guys is so fitting, the Reminders, because there's been a number of times where I've been making some music that I feel that it takes me outside of who I truly am and outside of my element. And my measurement for accountability, like what you mentioned earlier, like some musicians are saying, no, I'm a musician, I'm not a role model. But my measurement for accountability, and most importantly, what type of impact was this going to have, was always the Reminders. So your name is so fitting, because it's always a reminder to me to think like, yeah, man, would Asia and Samir do something like this? Like, come on, dog, I'm Baby Lang. I can't be just making anything like
Baby
that.
Lang.
Yo, for real, I kid you not.
You came with us, you were just a jit. But you know,
Yeah.
I think something I think of, there's an artist that my son loves. There's some artists that my son loves that are young dudes. And people would say they're not setting a good example for the community, or they're this, or they're rough, or they're wild. And I try to be very cautious of descriptors like that, because sometimes when people describe Black men, they describe them in very specific terms. So there's this artist that my son loves called Roddy Rich, and two other artists, their names escape me right now. But the fact that my son watched them make a transition in the contemporary climate with what's going on, from rapping about, maybe violence or women or drugs, to rapping about conscious issues, him witnessing that shift was more important than if they just tried to always be that, because my son recognized that some things are more important than others, and serving your ego is not as important as serving a higher purpose and serving your community. So if they would have been pretending to do that the whole time and it was disingenuous, it wouldn't have had the significance that it did for children watching, that they decided to take up a new path and take up a new way of expressing themselves that was meant to add value to their communities. And that's why I say sometimes people are always focused on what is, but sometimes the significance of seeing a marked change in somebody reminds you of what's important, because they're a testament to that.
And that's the thing about parenting, and having that balance as well is, our youngest child, our son, he's the one that's like keeping us up on like some of the new music. There's some artists I have no idea who they are.
That baby is the zeitgeist. He knows his whole world.
Right, he'll be like, yo, check this out, listen to this and listen to that. And I make it a point to be conscious of being aware of what he listens to. Because I could say for example, like a little baby, that's not something that I will go to. How would I even discover that, right? And so from there, okay, let me go ahead and actually listen to this and see what songs you can and can't listen to, right? So, and also explain to you what kind of artist he is, what kind of environment he comes from, why he's rapping about the things he's rapping about, because then you have a better understanding. You know what I mean? So I'm sure there's a bigger catalog that little baby has that he just can't listen to. My son can't listen to. I mean, there's just a handful of songs. But then, fast forward, and now you have all the uprising and the protests going on, and little baby creates a song for that my son now is super excited. He's like, oh yeah, my dad don't have a problem with me listening to this because of what he's talking about. And he don't have a problem with me singing along to this. You know what I mean? And so it's like, that's the balance that comes within being an artist, even like himself. Like little baby realizes now the responsible thing for me to do is a song like this, and not, you can't do a party joint right now.
Right. And we were all at some point, we all had a veil over our eyes at some point. You know what I mean? And it was the fact that people who didn't have that veil did not reject us. You know what I mean? And they didn't snatch the veil off our eyes either. They allowed us to have experiences that would make us want to look out from under the veil. You know what I mean? And when we're talking about negative thoughts, when we're talking about things like that, a lot of these people that we're talking about, people often ask me in interviews, like, oh, you must hate people like Nicki Minaj. But in the way that I was raised, when I look at Nicki Minaj, I'm from Hollis, Queens. She's from Jamaica, Queens, right? The level of poverty in some of these homes in the places that we come from, if you have nothing, absolutely nothing. Nicki Minaj said she didn't even have furniture, right? And she was living with her grandmother coming from the islands. Like, my father made different decisions for us because my father was present and he got us out of that environment. Her father was not present. You know what I mean? And when somebody offered her money and said, you'll never be poor again, if you've never been poor, you don't know the value that somebody's talking about. And so people are like, you must hate her. Absolutely not. I'm just blessed. I feel fortunate that my father was able to put me in a situation where I could make decisions for myself and I didn't have to make decisions for money. You know what I mean? And I think it's important in our language when we're talking about people that may be expressing themselves different from us, we always leave the door open. Always.
And it's just like you were talking about, like, that's a perfect example, because like you said, our children are raised a certain way, but there are other children who don't have that opportunity. Just like you say, your father was there and made certain decisions. Nicki Minaj didn't have that opportunity, that guidance. You know?
And our son, when he listens to that music, he starts to ask questions. And watching your children develop the craft of question is such an amazing experience as a parent, because our son will hear something controversial in a song, and then he'll start to ask us questions like, do you think that maybe his dad was around, or maybe his dad wasn't around, or do you think that maybe he didn't grow up with his parents, or do you think that maybe when he was younger, he fell in love with somebody and they didn't love him back? He wants to know the story behind these stories. And to me, I love watching that development in my children.
Yeah, and so we can explain things all day, but sometimes when we hit the road, we take them with us. So last time we went to Atlanta, I'm gonna show you where Zone 4 is. I'm gonna show you where Zone 6 is. I'm gonna show you where these people come from. And just like when we go to Chicago, when we work on the south side of Chicago, the west side of Chicago, with different organizations, you're gonna engage with these kids that have after school programs and see what they're about, see what they go through and what their stories are. You know what I mean? Get that context so you can tell them what it's like coming from the south side of Colorado Springs, and they can tell you what it's like coming from the south side of this city.
Right. And we taught our kids, like, words also can protect you, right, in a myriad of ways. So like prayers are words that can protect you, but sometimes projecting a larger image of yourself through words feels like protection. You know what I mean? Or talking about how dangerous you are when you come from a dangerous environment feels like protection.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So we weave these tapestries around ourselves. You know what I mean? We construct this armor with words, and whether that armor comes through prayer, or that armor comes through exaggeration of our dangerous exploits, or our armor comes from vocalizing detachment from love and detachment from intimacy, everybody is using words to shape some kind of armor to protect them from something, you know, and we recognize that because we come from those environments, you know, and my father made the decision to get us out of there when I was at a young age, but we always came back, and I always saw a marked contrast between my life and my family's life. Mm-hmm. And I never felt too far from them. You know what I mean? Because they were my family. So even though I'm living in Europe and you think I'm wealthy, you know what I mean? Because my dad gives me $10 a week or whatever. Yeah. You know, I never felt like I was not of them and they were not of me. So when it comes to talking about hood people and the way they behave, it's easier for me to rationalize their actions and their words and their behaviors than it is for me to dismiss them.
And that's how we look.
I was gonna say, I think that's good. That's very interesting, actually, because it goes to this whole thing where people were upset about people looting and rioting, and they weren't upset about the death of a human being. Like, the things and the items had more value than the actual death of this person with a heart and a soul. And so it's just not everyone is going to express how they feel the same way as you. And, you know, it's something interesting you mentioned, Asia. You said about the environment we come from. Like, I'm over in Asia, like in Indonesia, with some of the kindest and, you know, warmest and most welcoming people in the world. The most welcoming people in the world. But sometimes I still identify things like I'm in Detroit, you know? Like, I just maneuver in a way where I'm thinking, like, I got to remind myself, like, no, this ain't the D. This is just
right. And you also, then you start to say everybody's out, you know, in their full vulnerability, and you walking around with 100-pound armor on that you've constructed for yourself for no reason at all. You know what I mean? And you wonder why, you know, people perceive you the way they do. You know what I mean? It's like, why are you wearing all that armor? Like, we've never given you any reason to think we're going to harm you. You know what I mean? But it's just instinctive. It's like where I come from, no one walks around without their armor. Nobody walks around without their projections of themselves. It doesn't feel safe. And so sometimes when we get into environments where that is safe, it's very foreign to us. You know what I mean? And we sometimes, without even thinking, will lapse back into it. You know what I mean? Like, I have this thing where if I'm sitting down, I don't like people to stand when I'm sitting down for a long time. Like, sit down too. You know what I mean? Because it gives me this feeling of uneasiness, like something's about to happen. You know what I mean? That's trauma. Like, you know what I mean? From being sitting down and knowing that when somebody's standing up looking down on you, you're vulnerable. You know what I mean? So I feel the urge, either I have to stand up or you have to sit down. You know, and it doesn't make sense to be like that, right? And rationalizing it to people, they're always like, why does it matter if he's standing in your seat? I'm just like, I'm trying to develop, you know, it's little things like you're talking about, little things that feel like Detroit or little things that feel like Queens. You know what I mean? That you take them into a different cultural context and it makes you feel like you have some type of psychosis or like, why am I like this? You know? It's interesting to think.
I remember, like, my first 2 years in Indonesia, it was normal in Detroit or in some parts of the US, but like my first 2 years in Indonesia, all my friends are asking me, oh, why don't you want to sit with your back towards the door? We go to a restaurant, we go to a cafe. How come you don't want to sit with your back towards the door? I was like, no, we just don't do that. And then one of my friends asked me, like, yo, man, it's kind of weird, bro. You never want to, like, if I'm sitting down, you ask me to switch seats. like Malcolm X.
Yo, straight up, I have a friend in Colorado. She's a Caucasian lady, and she was inviting me over to her house for a barbecue. And I was asking her, who's there? I was like, who's there? I mean, and she's like, everybody. And I'm like, everybody like who? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I need to know who's there so I know if I want to be there or not. You know what I mean? Yeah. If I want to expend that energy, or if I want to, interact with certain people, or I might have beef with somebody, or I mean, we don't really have beef like that, but it's a reflex. And a lot of the things like Black people, a lot of the things that we do are reflexive and instinctive. You know what I mean? And it's our parents reinforce these behaviors all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? So my dad doesn't sit with his back to the door. I don't sit with my back to the door. I don't like when people stand. My dad doesn't like it. My grandfather doesn't like it. You know what I mean? It's like they're survival tactics. You know what I mean? It's like training. Like your parents and their parents are teaching you how to be safe in your own environment and how to survive. So I kind of hold on to those things because it allows me to go to a place like Indonesia or Morocco, but then also go back to Queens and know how to carry myself and know how to hold my own in the environment I come from. We were talking to a mentor the other day, and he said, it was such wisdom. He said, always remember where you come from, because you'll always end up going back there. Better, and you want to come back as a king or a queen, right? You want to come back with the ability to give your blessing and to help things be fruitful. But you can't go back there without remembering where you come from, because you don't want to get stabbed in the back. You know what I mean? So make sure you're a person that's always of multiple minds in terms of transitioning your survival tactics in different environments.
Can I ask you something? So when we think about these concepts that we were conditioned with, whether it's culture or regional, some things might be done different in LA and different in New York. An outsider looking in might say these are negative things, but on the inside, like we mentioned earlier, like this is what we know. This is my forefathers are doing it. Their forefathers are doing it. So I think it's subjective. You can't necessarily say this is negative and this isn't negative. It just is what it is, right? Someone who doesn't understand it might say it's negative, but someone who understands it might say, bro, no, that's just, stop tripping. That's just, that's the way it is. That's the way it's been. But either way, whether you can identify something as negative or positive, I think oftentimes we can identify something as, like you mentioned, armor or baggage or anxiety causing. How do we sort of identify these things that we understand as normal and make sure it doesn't cause us heartache? It doesn't cause us hypertension. I went back to the States recently, and one of the first things when I was in the car, we had passed a police car, and then instantly I was thinking, look back. Are they following us? Look back. And I'm looking back. I'm like, oh, they ain't worried about us. Okay. Whew. Yeah. But that's just something that, unfortunately, as a Black American, somebody taught it to me, or I learned it somewhere, or I just knew it was a safe thing to do, to know if the police are behind you or not.
Yeah. Man, there's been times when the baby turns on the Nintendo in the back and a blue light comes on, and I'm like, immediately, you know what I mean? Immediately.
Yeah. So what do we do? How do we turn these things into, I mean, there's no way to really make that positive, but how do we have a new approach and a new outlook?
The thing about it is, we come from we weren't born and raised in Colorado Springs. You know what I mean? We traveled around, moved around. Asia's from Hollis, Queens. I was born in Brussels, Belgium, lived in the Congo, moved to Texas, and then I came here. And so a lot of the things that we grew up with, we try to prevent our children from going through some of the trauma that we went through, right? But now it's not real. It's not a realistic thing for them. Like, you could be in Indonesia and telling people like, oh, I don't sit like this with my back. And they're looking at you like, bro, what?
There's no context.
There's no context. It's just not the same. But one thing that people try to do generation after generation is just breaking that cycle of the things that we went through so that other people don't have to go through that, right? Like Asia's dad did with her, like we're doing with our children, even to the point where her brother always said, man, you're raising your kids to be, like this, like that. Like we didn't come up with this. We didn't have
They call us the Cosbys.
You know what I mean? Like, That's the reality. Is you want to do better, right? And you want to do more than what you had and what you went through, and to change that narrative because you have the power to do that.
Right. It's like I have a cousin. He's from New York, and first off, when I was in New York, I lived there for the least amount of time that I've lived most places in my life, but we would always be back there. And I used to be hesitant about saying I was from there because people would say, well, what middle school did you go to? What high school did you go to? And I'm like, I didn't go to school there. And then my grandmother said, this is where you're from because you were raised by parents from here and it shaped your worldview, right? And when you come here, there's things about you that are going to make sense, you know, and I always embrace that because it's the only place in the world where there's houses that I can just do a soft knock and open the door and walk in. You know what I mean? And that feels like home to me. But one of my cousins in Colorado, you know, I'm taking the context of how it's like we lock every door. We got double locks on the, you know what I mean? My neighbors just leave their doors open to their cars, to their house, to whatever. So I had a cousin and he wanted to come visit. And he's talking and he goes, yo, cats be leaving their doors unlocked and all kinds of stuff over there, huh? I was like, yeah, pretty much. He goes, what are people working with over there? And I'm like, oh no, you can't come visit. Like your mentality cannot like transpose like to what this environment requires. But the thing about it is I think it's very difficult for us to change our context. You know what I mean? Because it's such a big part of our story. But what I think is important is to recognize when we have moments of contrast and mark them down in some way, whether it's mentally or journaling it down or speaking about it by saying, there came this point in my life where I was in a different environment and my context dictated that I behave in this way. And I made a conscious decision. It was a point of contrast in my life where I decided something different. You know what I mean? And I think any moment that's significant to you in your life was because of contrast, right? You going to Indonesia after being from Detroit, you got there and it's significant because of the contrast, you know? And when we have these opportunities where we feel the context and our instinct and all these things building up, to really sit with it for a second. You know, too many people are doing so much that not enough people are sitting in the moments that happen to them and really reflecting on what's going on. You know, in the world, you know, when you were talking about the looting, you know, when George Floyd was murdered, you know, we're talking about saying that the value of a human life is not as valuable as a product, right? Which when you're speaking in a capitalistic tone of voice is not rational, right? Are you saying life is more important than money, than advantage, than stepping up, than succeeding, than this? But to me, like I said before, when people start seeing an opening for them to take advantage of something, that's what capitalism dictates, right? You choose the individual over the community, right? You see an opening and you create an opportunity for yourself. You know what I mean? And so when people are constantly, first of all, the people that were looting were not people that were representing the social justice action that was taking place. No. They were there for looting, right? It's not people that marched and enjoyed the march and then decided, you know what, that was a cool, peaceful protest. We should probably get some sneakers right now. Right, it's just ridiculous. It wasn't that. It was two people in completely different frames of mind. One committing a social justice action, saying that a life is more important than money or power or authority or any of that. And the secondary group was a group that said, well, everybody's out here and the cops are focused on them, you know, so I see an opportunity for myself. And we come from neighborhoods where we know people like this.
Yeah.
No, we've been they would call us the conscious people or the hoteps or the Muslims or this, because we'd be like, yo, brother, like, we don't got to even get down like that. And they're like, while they're carrying like boxes of shoes, like, get out of here. You know what I mean? So we know those people too.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's an area of contrast in our lives, where now we know more people who would commit the social justice action than we do who would rob a store.
Yeah, I like how you term that as well. Like it's the contrast, right? Whether you're coming from this place and that place, what actually stands out and why it's actually something you can identify with is because there's this contrast.
and take note of those moments, because those are the moments of the greatest significance where Allah shows you all three, you know, past, present, future at one time. You know what I mean? And it's a moment like where time is suspended and you get to be who you were, who you are, and who you will be at the very same time.
Yeah. So we got the reminders here, rocking with Raise Karma. It's been an absolute pleasure to link back up and catch up with everybody.
Baby Lang, Baby Lang in the
Yeah,
building.
this is great. I'm glad you reached out, man. I'm glad you started this, and we're really excited to be a part of it.
Man, actually, do you remember, man, I've been like over the years just like peeking in, trying to like get something happening, like, you know, minus Corona, you know, hopefully in the present, in the form, like overseas and whatnot. But this is a start, man.
No, and that's the thing. Just like you said, you've been peeking and reaching out every now and then. So I always get a text. But when you called, I was like, he's in Indonesia. He's calling. He got something going on. So I knew it was something great.
Yeah, and when you were with us, man, you were in a tremendous moment of self-doubt, but we never doubted you for a second. Not for a second. Because you're a person of vision. You're a person of confidence. You're a person of community. You're a person of faith and friendship. Like, even when you had a moment of self-doubt, we never doubted you even for a moment. Yeah. So this is just a manifestation of everything, you know, we knew you were capable of doing. So we're glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're raising it up. Let's raise the vibration.
Let's get it. Cheers.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
So many things I've been wanting to say to you. There's nowhere for you to run to. Nowhere to run. And no way for me to hide. Nowhere to hide. Hey, there's so many things I've been wanting to say. There's nowhere for you to run to. Nowhere to run. Nowhere for me to hide. Welcome to the great unknown, unseen world. There's a storm coming. Who you following? No shortcuts, I take the long road. Footsteps in the dark, revelation shine bright. I'm an outlaw, fight back with music and light, but don't panic. Pick a side, choose wisely. Stay focused, connected, and healthy. Slow down, learn to control your energy. Stay away from the fire and grow gardens all around you for protection. We've been told every day's like this. We've been told every day's like this. We all know there be days like this, full of truths and secrets, element of wickedness. While we here, remember that you're amazing, capable of becoming the world's greatest. I'm serious, answer your calling. Listen and accept this awakening. Hey, there's so many things I've been wanting to say to you. And there's nowhere for you to run to. Nowhere for me to Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Thank you for rocking with us. We are the Reminders. If you're just tuning in, we'll pick up the pace a little bit. Hope you're feeling good.
All right now.
Let's get into it.
All right now. Hey.
Feel free to clap along, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, yeah, yeah. And it go, a little something like dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
I'm holding on to you, but
On.
I'm giving up the ghost thing.
Moving on.
Dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
I'm holding on to you, but I'm giving up the ghost thing.
Moving on.
Dust and bones. Ha, dearly beloved, we gathered here today to lay to rest all the mess standing in our way, to bury all the ghosts, all the skeletons and demons, all the weaknesses that keep us from achieving better things. Set an intention to
give more than less.
and make a way for your blessings, more freedom, less stress. Stop thinking about everyone else and underestimating yourself.
That's right.
And take all of your doubt, all your guilt and depression, all you're looking for validation in people and possessions. Take all of your hurt and all of your fear, bury all of that right here. Dust and bones,
Dust and bones.
I'm holding on to you for
Way too long.
I'm giving up the ghost thing.
Moving on.
Dust and bones,
Dust and bones.
dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
I'm holding on to you for
Way too long.
I'm giving up the ghost thing. Dust and bones. Hey.
Quit stressing, overthinking, overworking.
Hey.
Clear your mind from anything that's toxic.
Hey.
Time to face your fears, never revisit the bitterness, the anger, the grudges you held on to. You gotta leave it all behind. Lock 'em in a pine box, bury the hatchet. Get planted, solid as a rock. You will grow like a tree when you let it all go and feel free. Get excited about your future. Keep on digging deeper to reach your highest potential. Become monumental. It was I inside, now I'm truly satisfied. I inside, now I'm truly satisfied. Say,
Dust and bones,
dust and bones.
I'm holding on to you for
Way too long.
giving up the ghost thing.
Moving on.
Dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
Oh, what a feeling. Now that I can see that I got love for something, yeah, but it ain't got love for me. Oh, what a feeling. Now that I can see that I got love for something, yeah, but it ain't
Got love for me now.
say hey,
Hey,
say hey,
hey.
say yeah, yeah, say yeah, yeah, say hey, 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 say hey, 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 say yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Il est temps de tout changer, enterrer le passé, où les fantômes vont nous tirer dans leur corps.
shake it, shake it, shake
Il
it.
est temps de tout changer,
Alright,
enterrer le passé,
sound
les
good.
fantômes vont nous tirer dans leur corps.
Yeah. I'ma dig down 10 feet. Hey,
20 feet,
hey.
30 feet,
Bury all those things that been holding me.
10 feet, 20 feet,
Hey.
30 feet.
Oh, what a feeling. Now that I can see that I got love for something, yeah. It ain't got no for me. Oh, what a feeling. Now that I can see that I got love for something, yeah.
But it ain't got love for me. Let it all go. Ain't the black said, what we talking about?
Dust and bones,
Dust and bones.
been holding on to you
Way too long.
I'm giving up the ghost.
Moving on.
Dust and bones,
Dust and bones.
dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
I'm holding on to you
Way
for
too long.
giving up the ghost.
Moving on.
Dust and bones,
Dust and bones.
dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
I'm holding on to you
Way
for
too long.
giving up the ghost.
Moving on.
Dust and bones.
Dust and
One more time,
bones.
say dust and bones.
Dust and bones.
I've been holding on to you
Way
for.
too long.
I'm giving, 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 giving.
Just having a good time over here. All right, all right, all right. Okay, okay. Thank you for rocking with us. Thank you for your patience. We are the Reminders. Asia Black, Big Samir. Back to some acoustic vibes.
Ready? Make sure I'm good here now. Hope you guys are feeling good out there. Every breath I breathe, every word I speak, every note I sing is a prayer for you and a prayer for me to be strong enough to live for both of us. Though you're gone, you're so alive in me. And in my dreams, I get to see you and touch you and hold you and love you, but never long enough. I love every moment I had with you, but I am hurting because I miss you all the time. And I will never forget you. This is a message that I sent you from my heart. They say nothing lasts forever, forever, forever. They say nothing lasts forever.
Nothing lasts forever.
I don't care what they say. I will love you for forever, forever, forever. I will love you for forever. Love can last forever.
Wish that I could tell you how I live by
the examples you say.
Respect the plan of the Creator.
I won't ever forget
all the love and strength you've
given me.
I pass it on and pray often,
waiting for our reunion.
I'm thankful for the blessings and the lessons
in this lifetime.
Cherish the memories you
left behind.
My heart is broken, can't believe that was our
final goodbye.
I try to smile, but sometimes I cry.
I love every moment I had with you, but I am hurting because I miss you all the time. And I will never forget you. This is a message that I sent you from my heart. And they say nothing lasts forever, forever, forever. And they say nothing lasts forever.
Nothing lasts forever.
I don't care what they say. I will love you for forever, forever, forever. I will love you for forever. Love can last forever. You.
And I will raise you up.
And I will raise you up.
And I will always love you.
And I will always love you.
And I will raise you up.
Oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, whoa, oh.
Let's take them home.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
1, 2. Yes, yes.
Yeah. I came from the land of the mountains where rivers run and flowers smile. Mother Moon kissed me every night. Ooh. Now I'm living in a land of luxury where stars leave the sky to walk the streets, and I wonder why my heart is steeped in shadow. Oh, I know a lonely, deep and cold. It makes me want to go. Oh, I know a lonely, deep and cold. It makes me want to go. I just wanna go, so I beat my drum till morning comes. Then again until I set the sun. I send my sacred song as a message on the wind to tell my kin I'm coming home. Home, home, I'm coming home. Cracks in my heart, crown on my head. Watch the porn, I'm as good as dead if I got no one close enough to see. I can't see past the end of my reach, the ones I love that I can't touch, too far away to hear them pray for me. Oh, I know a lonely, deep and cold. It makes me want to go. Oh, I know a lonely, deep and cold. That makes me want to go.
I've been gone so long, finally on my way. Countdown, warm welcome, celebration day. I carry wisdom in my scars and bitter marks of what I've been through. A blackbird rebirth, flying back to you. Salt of the earth, I was caught up in the whirlwind. Wrestling for heaven, trying not to let the world win. Miraculous escape, great shape, divine mercy. Purify my soul, stay faithful on the journey.
So I beat my drum
till morning comes.
Then again until I set the sun. I send my sacred song as a message
on the wind
to tell my kin I'm coming home. Home, home,
I'm coming
home. I'm coming home. Coming home.
It's where we are now.
I'm coming home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
coming home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
coming home. And I've been away for so long. I have been so brave. I've been so strong.
But
now I finally come back to the place where I belong. Thank you so much for having us,
Yes,
Kennedy
yes,
Center.
we
We are the
appreciate you.
Reminders. I'm Asia Black. This
Big
is Big Samir.
Samir.
Sending big love to everyone watching. Big love out to the world.
Right here from Colorado to the rest of the world.
Indeed, we're sending you all that love.
Blessed love, peace.
Peace.
There is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. You can choose to step into it, or you can choose to step back. Back into a crowded hall of rushing figures, each one urging you on to a different goal, and none of them attainable. Hand-wringing rag people, squeezed of all joy, fists longing to squeeze you too. But there is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. To err on the side of kindness is easy because kindness has so many sides and never bolts its doors. Sly voices will try to convince you otherwise. In their outstretched hands, empty prizes rush towards them and they dematerialize. But there is a shaft of light at the edge of the world that is the present. Your feet are shy to step inside, but your shoulders long to soak up that shine. Melt the knots that your bowed neck hides. Accept this as your place, dear child. Pride lies not in elbowing forward to skip the line, but in believing your own disguise. Limping when you could stride, crawling when you could rise, not daring to risk exposure in an illumination this wide. There is a shaft of light at the edge of the world, and it is called home.